CatherinePooler.com. Check out this amazing stamp set. It's called Kind of Wonderful. It has coordinating dies. And then I'm giving you a peek at the angled squares background, although I didn't end up using it in this video. Sorry about that. You'll definitely see it though. Here are the kind dies. We call these 3 of a kind because there are 3 of them. You see these 2 that I'm snipping apart right now? Those actually nest inside of each other, and the small kind will cut the kind stamp out exactly, and then you have the layer behind it, and then you actually have this third one, the die that was in the middle. That is another stamp that will layer in between those 2 that come nested inside of each other. So it's a great little set of products to play with. And I'm just grabbing my Misty and I'm gonna stamp that kind. I'm gonna use multiple ink colors on one stamp, and that's why I chose to use the Misty. This is such a large stamp that I wanna make sure I get it right. And if I stamp it once and it doesn't come out, I can ink my stamp again and stamp it in the exact same place. I love the detail on this kind, all those little flowers. It's just a really, really beautiful stamp. All right, and then I'm gonna stamp it again. So the first time I stamped it in spa colors, and now the second time I'm stamping it in party colors. So I'm using All That Jazz and Mint to Be, and then I'm going back with the Mint to Be and just kind of blending in between the 2 colors to make sure that I get a nice blend. I'm gonna move my paper up on my Misty a little, make sure that the kind is gonna hit in the open spot there, and then we will stamp it. So now that I have my 2 kinds stamped, I'm gonna die cut them both in different ways. So I'm using the smallest kind die, which cuts, you can use it on your own and just cut it from colored paper and then layer it with the other dies in the set, or you can die cut the stamped sentiment, which is what I'm doing here. So I'm doing the die that cuts it out exactly, and I'm doing the second kind of quote-unquote level. This one will cut just a little bit of a border around the kind. So we'll run those through and we'll see how this comes out. So here it is. Here's the one that has just a little bit of a border. And the next one, you can see how it cuts out the stamped image perfectly. I was a little bit nervous about this because it's kind of, you can't really see it. You just position the die over the stamped image so you can't see any of the stamped image, and pray for the best. So it worked, yay. So now I'm gonna work on a background. So this is a piece of Canson watercolor paper. It comes like in a pad from the craft store. It lasts a long time. And then I'm just taking my All That Jazz ink and my Mint to Be ink, smooshing it onto my acrylic block, spritzing it with water, and then dabbing my watercolor cardstock into it. So the watercolor cardstock is going to be able to hold a lot of water. It's not going to pill up, and it's not going to buckle too much like regular cardstock would. That's why I'm using watercolor paper. And then I'm taking my heat tool and I'm drying it, and then I'm dipping again. So you may have seen me do this technique before. There was a little period of time there where I was super obsessed with it, and I think like every card I made for a while was with this technique. It's super fun, but I love it with these the blue, All That Jazz, and the Mint to Be. It looks really pretty. So the name of the game here is depth and layers. I'm just drying and then dipping and dabbing it into the watercolor palette again, and just doing it over and over until I get a look that I'm pleased with. Another technique with Catherine Pooler ink, it is coloring your own cardstock. You want to make sure your ink pad is juicy and fresh and ready to go. So my All That Jazz ink pad probably would be okay for stamping, as you actually saw at the beginning of the video. It worked just fine. But for direct paper, I want it a little bit more juicy, so I'm just re-inking my ink pad, and then watch this. Boom, All That Jazz cardstock. So I'm just going over it a little bit more just to make sure I don't have like streaks and like weird spots. And then I'm just going to adhere my watercolor technique piece right over the top, so now it has a really pretty All That Jazz border around it. All right, so now we're ready for the layering part of this card. Now, there are 3 dies. I showed them to you at the beginning, and they all layer, but 2 of them come nested inside of each other. So the 2 that are nested, the one that is not nested is actually the layer that goes between the 2 that are nested. Are you following me? And so now looking back on this card, what I should have done is die cut this black background without the kind die cut inside of it. So do you remember back at the beginning of the video when I did the spa kind and I cut it out exactly with the smallest die? That is the one that would fit inside of this black. But the meant to be and all that jazz kind that I die cut is a smidge larger. So it's not going to lay inside or inlaid die cutting into that black layer. Are you following me? I am going to do another video on the layering of these kind dies, so if you're having trouble wrapping your head around it like I am right now, hopefully that will help. But because I didn't use a solid black layer, I'm just grabbing the little pieces from another kind that I die cut with black, and I'm just laying them inside so that the stamped kind is going to have the black behind it. Are you following me? I hope. If not, just watch out for another video because I will make this more clear. So now, building sentiment. So this stamp set is called Kind of Wonderful, which I think is a really fun sentiment and stamp set name. And this card is going to say, you are kind of wonderful. The extra little sentiments here are very delicate, and because I'm stamping on watercolor cardstock, the watercolor cardstock has a little bit of a rough texture to it. So I want to make sure I can stamp it several times and I get a really crisp, perfect black sentiment on there. So the Misty is perfect for this. You are kind of wonderful. And then I have a card base. I just cut it to go behind here, and yeah, some black and white twine to finish it off. So I didn't finish up the spa kind, and I didn't use the angled squares background, but I'll get to those. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thanks for being here. I hope you'll subscribe to my channel if you want to see more information about this card, including supply lists and photos. You can click over to my blog. I will leave the link below if you're watching on YouTube. Supply lists are below in the YouTube description. And that's it for today. Hope you guys are doing awesome. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you soon.